Zoom on my
This
laptop.
meeting is being recorded.
Sorry, you're saying something?
I didn't have Zoom on my laptop, so I was just downloading.
Okay, no problem. All right, so the meeting is now recorded and I'll start with Okta trading. Let me share my screen. I believe you can see my screen, right?
Mhm.
And you both of you have your own Okta tenants, the developer one.
Yeah.
Okay. So before while it's loading, so there are two different types of Okta tenant, not two, there are three types of Okta tenant. One is developer, which is always free, where you can have up to 500 users. I think they have now increased it to 1500. You can have 5 SSO applications, including OIDC, SAML, and SWA. You can create your custom authorization server and you can play around with that. So it's free forever. Then you have an Okta preview, which you will only get from Okta licensing team. So with preview of account, you have all the features of Okta, whatever like you want to purchase from Okta or whatever you have already purchased. And if you want to just have a preview tenant for your developer sandbox environment, then we have a business tenant with Okta where you pay for each and every services, and the charges are uh, different for different enterprises. So that comes from the sales team. So the one which we are going to use is developer. So more or less all the features are same except one or two features, which anyway we are not going to cover in this course. So I think I explained what this dashboard is of Okta. Today we'll start with directory. So unlike any directory system, let's say Active Directory, I believe I have asked you to read something on the Active Directory, and I hope you have prepared. So Active Directory is like a centralized repository or a database where we store all our enterprise object, let's say users, groups, security groups, distribution list, printers, network devices at one place. And it connects with multiple other services so that anytime any service want to read from this database, let's say for authentication or for discovery or anything, they can use Active Directory. Similar to that, Okta also has its own directory service called Universal Directory, where it stores users and groups. Now, the question is why it's called a universal directory? Because Okta has a capability of connecting to multiple several applications, and it can pull users from multiple sources, not just from one source, but from different sources. And it will put all those users from different sources in one place. And that is why they have named it as universal directory. Okay. So that will be our topic of discussion today. So Universal Directory has two major components. One is group, one is people. People or person means user. It can be a service account, it can be a user account, and groups. So group can be a security group. By default, it is always a security group. It can also be a distribution group if it's being pushed to Office 365 only. So these are the two groups format which Okta supports. Okta does not support nested group. By nested group, I mean you cannot have a group inside a group, which you can have in AD. So here, Okta does not support that. So if we talk about people or the user himself, so in my last session, I briefly talked about what is an identity access management, and identity is always related with the user. User can be a real human. It can be a machine also. Like your printer can also be categorized as a user because your printer will be using a service account to connect to the network. and get the job request, the printing job request. Uh, a server can also be categorized as a user, because server might be connecting with another server by authenticating to itself. So all these entity or the real user, like the real human, they are all referred to as a user, because they will need an account to authenticate. So in Okta, we will commonly refer them as a user or people or person, whatever. I prefer the term called user, and I will be using throughout this course. So you can see all of your users, whichever has been pulled in from Okta, sorry, pulled in to Okta from different sources, like Salesforce, Office 365, Active Directory, or Workday, or any application. You can find all those users here and their attributes and their status. So let's see one user for an example. Let's say Shannon. So Sharon is one of the user. So if I click on Sharon's name, I can see her status. As of now, this user is in deactivated status. Here you will see the live status of the user, and I have an option to activate or delete the user. The user itself is a type of user. We will discuss this later on when we can create different types of user account in Okta. And if I go to profile, I would see more information about this user. So all these information, as per my last session, these are all called properties of the user or the attributes. Okay, so we refer to them as attributes. So these are all the attributes of this user, like the username through which user can log into Okta, the user's first name, last name, primary email address, job title, display name, which she might be seeing in her Outlook emails, Skype or Teams, mobile phone number, which can be enrolled for SMS authentication, then city, state, zip code, and other information about this particular user. So all these information are called as attributes. All users will have attributes. Of course, it is not mandatory to fill in all the attributes. There are only four mandatory attributes, which is username, first name, last name, and primary email. So once these four mandatory attributes are filled in, other attributes are always optional unless and until you go and change it as a mandatory. So for Okta, we only need these four uh, attributes for a user to be present in Okta. And one requirement of Okta is whenever you create a user in Okta, this username should always be in a format of an email address. It does not have to be a correct, like a live email address, but it has to be in the format of an email address. And for email purpose, definitely we have primary email as a mandatory attribute among the four. All right, any question?
No, I'm good.
All right,
I'm good.
okay. So this was deactivated user. Let's see one of the active user. I think there is only one active user. Okay, let's see Jawad. So Jawad is an active user, and this is a primary email address of Jawad. And I have different options here. I can reset password for Jawad. So if I click on reset password, I will not be able to set a password myself for this user. I will need to either send him a temporary link where he can set his password himself, or I can generate a temporary code and I can get a temporary password and I can give it to Jawad, and Jawad can log in using the temporary password and he will be prompted to change the password. At that point of time, the status will change from active to password expired into one-time password mode. That means as soon as he logs in with that temporary password, his password has already expired. So Okta will prompt him to change his password, and he can set his own password as per the password policy, and he would be able to use Okta. Apart from password, if user is enrolled into any kind of multi-factor, then you can also reset the multi-factor. Suppose if user is not receiving SMS, or it is an incorrect phone number, or his phone is now stolen and he wants to change his mobile SMS factor number or anything as such, then you can come here, you're going to click on reset multi-factors. it will show you all the list of multi-factor user is enrolled into. You just need to check the box and click on reset. For this user, there is no multi-factor enrolled as of now. And similarly, for this user also, you can see the same attributes, and definitely all the attributes are not filled, only 4 required attributes are filled for this user. Don't worry about these attributes. These are my custom attributes. You will not see in your Okta. Then let's talk something about status. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So isn't multi-factor mandatory thing?
No, multi-factor is never a mandatory.
Okay.
Why do you think so?
No, you just said right that that user doesn't set it, so I thought it's for
No.
security it's needed. I thought.
Okay, no. So multi-factor is not a mandatory thing. The different company have different approach towards multi-factor, which we will discuss during the multi-factor session. But just to give you a hint, so there is something called internal network and external network. So whenever you are within the internal network, multi-factor is never required. Multi-factor is only required when you go outside of internal network, that is in the public internet, or if you're using a highly sensitive application. Okay. So this is the architecture of how multi-factor prompt should be. All right. So let's talk about status. What are the different types of status we have in Okta? So active is very clear. That means user is active. User can log in. User can like do access his apps assigned to him, and he can see his profile. He can change few things in his profile and so on. Then we have another plain and simple status called deactivated. So deactivated means user has been deactivated and user cannot log in. User will remain in the deactivated status for 30 days. After 30 days, user will be deleted from Okta. Then we have another status which is similar to deactivated, but it's not deactivated. That is called suspended. So in suspended, user can still not log into Okta. He cannot access his applications from Okta, but user account will not be deleted after 30 days. Generally, if you have heard this term called LOA or leave of absence, whenever you go on a leave of absence, we suspend that user account so that once user comes back, we can just activate the same account and user will have the same privileges which user had before going on leave. Have you heard of this thing before?
No.
No.
Okay. All right, so that is on a leave of absence, or when you go on a critical illness leave, or any leave which is more than 30 days. So we generally suspend your account and you cannot access any of your applications, even if you have correct username and password on your leave days. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 days of sick leave. In that case, we don't. Okay. So that is another status called suspend. Uh, because if you appear for any Okta-based interview, they will ask you this question: what is the difference between suspend and deactivated? So you need to know that suspend is temporarily suspending account for a user for a short time, while deactivation means termination of the user. Okay.
Okay.
Then we have other status, which is like password expired. So in every enterprise, there is a password policy which talks about what can you have in your password and for how many days you can use the same password. So let's say if my security policy says that after every 60 days you have to change your password, then that you can only use your password for 60 days. So after 60 days you will enter into password expired mode. So your current password will still be valid. You will log in with your current password, But as soon as you log in, Okta will ask you to change the password. If you do not change the password, Okta will not let you proceed further. So you have to change the password. There is no other way. So that is one another status, password expired. This will also happen if I click on reset password here and if I generate a link or if I generate a temporary password, you will still enter into the password expired mode. Uh, what else? Yeah, we have logged out. So again, as per your password policy, let's say if I say if you enter your incorrect password for the 5 times, your account will get locked out. So that means if anybody tries to do a brute force attack, or even if you forget your password, and if you try to attempt more than 5 times with incorrect password in a row, your account will get locked and an administrator has to unlock an account, or if you have set in your password policy to unlock account after 1 hour or 30 minutes, it will get auto unlocked. So that is another status of lockdown. Then there is one more status which is called staged. So staged is the very first status which a user gets when his account is created in Okta. After staged, we move to pending user confirmation state. From pending user confirmation state, we go to active state or any of these states which I have talked about. So stays is the very first. So like if you create an account for the user and you do not set the password as an admin and you do not even send a welcome email to the user, then user will be in staged state. And we will see that state as well today itself. Then what else you have? Let me think. Yeah, password reset. You also have a status called password reset. So instead of sending you a temporary password, if I send you a link, you will go to password reset state. So password reset state looks like this. Yeah, you are now in the password, like this user is now in the password reset state. So anytime this user logs in using that link, user will be asked to create a new password by himself. So these are different states which we have in Okta. I cannot remember other states now, but if I do, I will tell you about it. Okay. So this is all about status of the user. Why we are talking about status of the user is that will help you during the troubleshooting. With any status apart from active, user cannot directly log into Okta. Like with password expired, user cannot log in directly to Okta until he creates a new password. Same goes for password reset. With deactivated and suspended, definitely he cannot log into Okta at all. And there is no way he can reset the password also. So the only status which will help user to log in is active. So whenever you receive an incident or a call from help desk or from any user stating that I am not able to log into Okta, you will first things you will need to check is his status, because this is very important. Based on this, it is decided whether a user can log into Okta or not. Yeah, if it is fine, if it is active, then we will do further troubleshooting, which is definitely there, but this is our first code. Now that we have seen a user, we know what a user is. Let's create a user. So if we want to create a user one by one or one user at a time, we can use this add person button here, which is with the directory people. If I click on add person, it will ask me to select a user type. As of now, you will have only one user type called user. That is a default user type in Okta. And you will need to fill in these 4 mandatory fields. Okay, these are mandatory, as I told you. Without this, you cannot create a user in Okta. And then the password. So we'll talk about the password when we reach there. Let's fill in this form. You can also do it while I'm doing it. So why the primary email and username are coming same? Because generally, as per Okta, primary email, since Okta assumes username to be in the email address format, it assumes primary email address as a username itself. That is why you see both are same. But once the user is created, we can change the primary email to anything. And then when we go for password, we have two options, sent by user and sent by admin. So when we do sent by user, then we have to check this box which says send activation email now. Otherwise, user will not receive any email from Okta on his primary email address, and user has no way to activate his account. If we check this box, then user will receive an email from Okta asking him to click on a link and activate his account. And while activation, user will be prompted to provide his secondary email address, maybe his phone number for SMS, or yeah, he will also be asked to set up a new password for his account. If we select set by admin, then we can set a password and user will enter into a password expired state. If we have this checkbox enabled, which says user must change password on first login. If we uncheck this box, then definitely user will be in active state, and this will be the password which user needs to log in with always until and unless user goes to his own profile and changes the password. So these are two different ways. So let's see each state. So if I uncheck this box, okay, then what status will user get into? Anybody has idea?
Pending state maybe?
Vasi, if you're speaking, we cannot hear you.
Oh,
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I'm saying pending state.
Pending.
Is it
Pending
anything like?
what? Pending user action.
Yeah, pending action.
Okay, but I think no. User will go into a stage state.
Oh,
But let's see. If I click on save and if I look for a myth, what status user is
staged.
in?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
staged.
that's the very first status a user gets into. Once we send activation email to the user, then user get into a pending user action state. If I click on activate, then user will get into a pending user action status. That means an activation email has been sent to this email address, and now user has to click on that link and activate himself.
Okay.
Okay. Instead of that, if I would have done like this, let's see, I'm missing two. I don't have much example of user, so this name. And if I now set the password as an admin, what status will user be in?
Deactivated. No.
Why deactivated? By default, user will never go to deactivate or suspend the state.
Suspended.
No. Okay, what we are forcing the user to do to change the password,
To
right?
clear.
On his
Yeah.
password. When will Okta ask the user to change the password? When his current password has expired. And what is the state we have for current password expired? The status is itself called password
Password
expired.
expired. Yeah.
So if I save this, user will go into a password expired state. So this is very important. You have to keep in mind what status you are getting based on the action you take while creating the user. Okay. Now
Okay.
let's see for this user. For this user, I can also set password and activate, but in that case, I will not get an option to set the password myself. I will get a temporary password, which I can share with the user and user can use that and that user will go into a password expired state. So I got a temporary password. Now I can give this password to the user. The user can log in with this password and can activate his account. And as of now, user should enter into a password expired state. Yeah, user has already got into password expired state.
Okay.
So this is pretty simple. Okay. It just
Mm,
requires some practice and you should be good.
sure.
All right. So you have now seen how to create one user at a time. How about if you need to create multiple users at a time, let's say 100 or 200 users at a time, or some organization does not have a, a budget to buy workflows tool like Workday and all. So they are still using Excel, and HR will send a data like a list of new hires, let's say, or any changes in user data in an Excel format. And you need to update all those users in Okta. And if the user does not exist in Okta, you have to create those users in Okta if it's a new hire. So there can be 100, thousands, or 2,000 users in that list. You cannot come here, search the user manually and do it for 1,000 users. So what is the best way? You do it. There are multiple ways, but one of the best way is CSV. So since we're getting the data already in Excel, we'll just format the data as per Okta requirement, and we can then upload that CSV to Okta, and Okta will process those changes itself. So we don't have to do anything. Okay. So that's a very good tool which Okta has provided us. Uh, Vasi, as you have told before, you have already played around with Okta. So I believe you knew about this, but let's explore. So if I click on more actions here, I have import users from CSV. If I click on this, it gives me a template. I'll download this template. Let's say I'll download it to my downloads folder. And I'll open this template here. So here as well, I have to fill in only 4 information. Login, which is username, first
Yeah.
name, last name, and email address. So these are the only mandatory fields. I can fill other fields or I may not. It's up to me. If I want to update any other field, I will. Otherwise, I'll just leave it blank. So let's create 2 new user. So I'll create, let's say for one of the user, I'll fill in the street address. I'll save this as a CSV. You can have a maximum of 10,000 users here. Okay, in one CSV. And now I can browse to this file and I can upload it. So uploading. Now if I click on next, Okta will first check if the format in which this file is presented to Okta is correct. If it is correct, then Okta will check if the data validation, like if in the login field, instead of email address, if you have entered something else, in first name, if you have started with a numerical, since user's name cannot start with a numerical, and so on. So it will do those kind of data validation. If all those data validation steps passes, then Okta will start taking the action required. Now I have an option to automatically activate these new users. So in that case, all of these users will be sent an activation email to their corresponding email addresses. Let's not do that, and I click on import users. So I should be able to see 2 users created. So it's true. Yeah, so it says 2 new users. So see, there is no changes in existing users, no updated users, 0 users unchanged, 0 users with errors. So there were no errors, and 2 users were imported. If there was an error, so Okta will create the users for whom there were no errors. For users with error, it will give you a link. You click on that link, it will download a CSV again. And for each user, for each row, it will tell you what was the error. And you have to rectify the error and upload the CSV again. Okay. I'll click on done, and I should be able to see both the users here in my Okta. I can see it's coming out. I did not choose to activate him, so it's not activated. And what was the other user somewhere? And I think, yeah, something open here. So any questions? This was pretty straightforward.
What it will do for the duplicate fields?
When you say duplicate fields, the existing
You mean,
users?
yes, yes.
Okay, so for existing users, it will update the same user. So let's see that we already have these 2 users now, right?
Yeah.
So instead of 128 Richmond Street for him, I'll make it 64 Street. Okay, and I'll give him a state. Let's give him a country code of US. Okay, and for Samay Rana, I'll change his last name to Agarwal. Okay, so these are the 2 changes I did. I'll update it and re-upload the CSV. So what does it say? 2 users updated, right?
Updated.
If I click on done, it will not create a duplicate user. Okay, if I go to first Samir Malhotra is still there without activation. If I go to his profile, his address should have changed to 64 Plum Street instead of Richmond. Now let's see that other guy. What was his name? Samay Agarwal now, right? So it was earlier Samay Rana. Now it is Samay Agarwal. So there is no 2 Samay. There is only 1 Samay, and his last name got updated in Okta based on our CSV profile.
Okay.
Okay. So if the user is existing, it will update the user. If it's not an existing user, it will create a new user.
Okay.
Okay. So these are the few things which you can do with the user. Definitely now, if you want to reset password for more than 1 user, let's suppose 10 users at a time, then instead of going to a user profile and clicking on reset password here, what you can do is you can also go to people and you can click on reset password, and it will give you a list here. So currently it shows black because it says show only the user with status of logged out. Instead of that, I'll click on all. So it will show me all the users, and then I can select the users of my choice for whom I want to reset password and so on. And I can select multiple users here, and I can click on reset password, and it will trigger an email to all these individual users with a link where they can set up a new password. So this is one thing which you can do here in dashboard with multiple users. Similarly, you can do the multi-factor reset for all of these users. Yeah, so pretty much this user section is very easy. It's only confusing when you start troubleshooting on it. And the one thing which you need to focus is status. Status is very important. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me now. Otherwise, I'll give you a task to complete.
No, no questions.
All right, so now since we have time, let's do a few bit question answer session. Since you don't have any question, I'll ask the question. If I click on reset password here, okay, let's say Oh, no, not Samay. Let's activate him. Okay, first. So he's in pending user action. Okay. Now, if I click on set password and activate, and I choose to send him a password link, what will happen?
Um, he will get an activation email. That's the one
For
thing.
the password link, he'll get an activation email.
No, wait. Set password.
Can you repeat the question again?
I said if I go to a user profile, if I
Mhm.
click on reset password button here, which is not present for this user, but ideally should be for other users, and if I choose to send him a reset link, what will be the status of the user?
Oh, he'll be sent a code, I think that's what it is.
No, I'm not asking what will happen, what the user will receive. I just want to know what will be the status the user will fall into. Or how would you know as an Okta administrator that this user has already been sent a password reset link? Suppose I am the user. I logged a ticket saying I need to reset my password. You have already sent, another administrator has already sent me a reset link. I called into you now saying that I never received a link, or like I'm not able, I want to reset my password. So how do you verify whether I already have a password reset link or not, and so on? Or suppose if there is any business requirement to find out all the users for whom the password reset link has been sent and user has not yet reset the password. So how do you do that? So what status code are you going to look at to identify the users for whom the password reset link has already been sent?
Not sure.
So the status itself is called password reset,
Oh,
right? Told you for Jawad. So if you look at Jawad, if you see his status,
mhm.
password reset. If I generate a temporary code, then user gets into password expired. But if I send him a link, then it goes into a password reset.
Okay.
Okay,
Link,
that's our
link
status.
is.
That's why I said either you ask me question or I'll ask you question. Okay.
Yeah, I will work
Better
on
you
it.
ask question.
Okay. One thing which you did not ask, or I should tell you proactively without you asking. This country code which you see here is ISO 2-digit country code. Okay. So you cannot put in any code of your choice. Like for US, you cannot put in USA. Okay. That is not acceptable. It has to be US. For India, you cannot put INT and it has to be IN. Similarly, for each and every country, there is a list from ISO of their 2 digits country code. You have to put that itself. Okay, so this is a validated field. Zip code is not validated field because different country has different way of defining their zip code. But this country code is ISO validated field, so you have to put in the right format, which is 2-digit country code. Again, one more is time zone. You cannot put in any data of your choice. It has to be in a time zone format, like Pacific plus 5:30 or plus minus 2:30, whatever it is. Likewise, you have to put it in in a proper time zone format. You cannot just put it in any format. So these few are validated fields, which requires like a format validation. Email and username are again validated field, which requires the email format itself. What else? phone number, you can also put dash in a phone number. You can like divide the phone number into 3, 3, 4 groups. Yeah. So this was all about user profile and different fields validation. So can you create 3 users manually and try to populate different attributes for these users in a different format, and then using CSV create 5 users? Would it be possible? Like not now on this call. I'm giving this you as an assignment.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if you do this, like then tomorrow I'll start with groups and group rules, and then we'll move to seeing different types of user which we can create in Okta, and what is the use case of creating different user types, and then we'll progress further from there from tomorrow. Today it was very short because we already like waited for Mind Magics for 10 to 11 minutes, then for this Zoom call and all. So it's
Okay,
only a
yeah.
short meeting today, but yeah, definitely we'll connect tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow is weekend, so I think Aparna said she's not available during weekend, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then it will be Monday. Yeah, then we'll
Yeah,
connect on Monday, 11 a.m.
Okay.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. And if you have not studied or read about Active Directory, then you still have got 2 week offs to study on that.
Okay. Do we have to install that? You were saying something in the previous class about
Yes, we will be installing it, but we'll install it together. So we will create a server, a virtual machine, and we'll install Windows Server into that first, and then we'll install Active Directory role in that server.
okay. Yeah.
Okay. So we will have like a week or at least 4 days with that Windows Server, because we will configure Active Directory and IWA. So for these 2 activities, we require Windows Server.
Okay.
All right. So I'll share this recording link as soon as it's available,
Mhm.
and I'll also inform the Mind Magics that this was conducted through my personal Zoom, because actually they keep all the recording and everything with them.
Yeah.